right, everyone. It is 9 o'clock on the third Tuesday of the month, and you know what that means. That means it is Lakeside Chat time. Looks like we've got a good 40 plus people already on the call, and I'm sure that number will continue to tick up, as I know we've got just over 130 people registered to be on with us today, which I have to just assume means that this topic of burnout is something that we are all both experiencing on a regular basis, but also want to understand. And I know at least that is how I felt. So when I admittedly got introduced to Cara, what did we meet about 3-4 weeks ago through Becky Foy, our director of consulting, who used to work with Cara. I think our first 40 minutes of what was supposed to be a 1 hour prep call ended up just being her and I becoming what I am now calling one of my nearest, clearest best friends, who now we've only met through the virtual sense, and I cannot wait to meet you in real life as well. But I have no doubt that those of you that have either been on a Lakeside Chat in the past or are new to Lakeside Chats are going to enjoy this hour, because I have truly had the pleasure of getting the chance to work with Cara and learn from Cara over the time that we've prepped for this. And I'm really excited to bring that to all of you. So with that, 9:02, why burnout feels normal and why it shouldn't. All right. For those of you that have been on these before, I apologize that you've seen this slide about 100 times, but I'm going to revisit this slide just because it is new for those of you that are new to Lakeside Chats, and I know we have a number of those of you that are new. So here's just a quick setup on what Lakeside Chats are. These are this is my legal statement on the front end. This is a publicly recorded session. These recordings will be made available to you after the event. So just so you know, this is an event that we will send. I try to preempt some of the questions that come up through the chat. Yes, you will get a link to the deck. You will see that this deck is not very elaborate, but we will make sure we get you a link to the deck. We will get you a link to the recording. And then any of the references that get brought up throughout the conversation today, I'll make sure I make note of and get those to you guys in the follow-up materials as well. You'll get a follow-up, probably a follow-up email from me early part of tomorrow. Other things I want to just call out is the fact that these events are what I refer to as underproduced events. And what that means is we want you, as the now currently 68 of you, to feel like you are as much a part of this conversation as Cara and I are. We, of course, came prepared with a topic and have a direction that we think we can take this conversation if you guys say nothing. But along the way, we want to engage you with chat questions. We want you to use the team features as much as you can, like things, comment on things. Every so often, I might even ask you to turn your mic off and add the conversation. But just so you guys know, Cara and I are the only ones that have our videos on. Otherwise, you guys know that your mics and your videos are in fact off. I will also remind you that this is for positive discussion and genuine curiosity. One of the 4 values here at Lakeside is that we are in fact curious. And that's where we're coming into this with. Cara has written a book on the topic. So she actually comes into it with a little bit more science and art than even just the sense of curiosity. But we want you guys to all come with that level of curiosity. Though she has written a book, I'm sure she will also attest to the fact, Cara, that you do not have all of the answers on this particular topic, and that there are no right answers in some of these situations, and that's 100% okay. The goal of these sessions is always for information sharing and conversation starting. The other thing that I'm realizing that now, after having done 18 plus of these Lakeside Chats, is I need to reset the stage on who is in fact Lakeside. So Lakeside HR Group is who I work for. I'm the director of business development here at Lakeside. We've been around for we're knocking on our 4-year anniversary here next month. So excited to know that when we are back here next month, we'll be celebrating 4 years of Lakeside. We are both a recruiting service as well as an HR consultancy. Recruiting, we are wide. We have an amazing team of recruiters that are available to do contingent recruiting for any particular role that you might have. On the HR consulting side, we have an amazing team of consultants that serve as oftentimes a fractional resource when you have that either project or you're a small enough business that you don't have HR and you know you need to make sure you're doing HR correctly. So that's where our team fits. Our mission is really to strengthen small to mid-sized businesses through personalized recruiting and HR consulting solutions. And we do that through our values of being genuine, curious, scrappy, and value adders, hopefully all four of which show up here on today's Lakeside Chat. With that, now I want to introduce my lovely friend, now friend and author, Cara. Cara, I have told others that on this is I don't like it when I speak and someone reads a bio about me. So I'm going to let you introduce you, and then we'll make sure that we send your LinkedIn and your email and contact information. So if anyone wants to cyberstalk you beyond, they surely can. But do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Erin. Super excited to be here today. Obviously, a topic I'm passionate about. I did write a whole book about it. It took me a couple of years because, as you said, I don't know everything, but I wanted to know everything. And so I wanted to put everything into that book. So I've worked in HR for, 20, 25 years. And this topic is really important to me because I was in a job I loved. Great benefits package, a highly sought after employer. And I just got to the point where I needed out myself. And I was exhausted all the time on a plane almost every single week, not showing up the way I wanted to at work or with friends or family sometimes, very impatient, short with people, stressed all the time. And I needed out. And so I probably swung the pendulum a little bit too far. And I quit my job and moved to a tropical island because I was like, I have to get out of here. I had no plan. I'm not a trust fund baby. I had about 6 to 9 months worth of pay and just thought I will figure it out. And while I was down there, I kind of had a very humbling experience. I realized that as much as I love to blame my boss or my company for my burnout, I realized I didn't have the skill set needed to deal with work stress or life stress, which that realization sent me down this rabbit hole of how do we figure this out? How do I figure this out for myself? And then once I figured that out, I realized I've got to help. It started with my clients. I got to help my clients with this, and then kind of led into this book. And so now that's the work I do, really working with organizations and individuals to say, how do we understand this stress, this burnout, and how do we teach the skills to people so that they can deal with it in a more effective way? And it's been awesome. It's been fun.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you guys, you're going to get this beautiful marriage of where science meets heart here at the same time, because that's what I've gotten from the few conversations we've gotten a chance as we've talked about this topic and gotten to know each other. So thank you for that. It was a great introduction. I'm also noticing I'm wearing the same outfit that I am in my headshot right now, and that is stressing me out slightly, just because that's who I am. So I'm going to switch slide, but I know, Cara, before we jumped into the slide, you wanted to sort of level set the conversation. So do you want to start there?
Yeah, I would love to. I'm hoping everyone walks away today with really 3 things: an understanding of burnout and why it's so prevalent, a little bit of agency so you can start to realize that there is something I can do about this. Oftentimes we just feel like this is just how life is, but you do have agency and you can do something about it. And the third one is a couple practical skills that you can start using today. So we're actually going to start with one of those. So this is going to feel like woo-woo to some of you. I'm just going to say that up front, but I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. We're going to do a couple of things. One is just one deep inhale. I want you to focus on 2 things. Inhale into your diaphragm, not into your chest, but into your diaphragm. And the most important part of this big breath is a really long exhale. So we're going to do that together. That long, long exhale is super key. So when you want to use that for kind of slowing down your nervous system, you want to focus on that long exhale. And the next thing I'm going to have you do is just take a minute and look around the room. Not even a minute, 20 seconds. Just notice things that you haven't noticed before or that you haven't noticed for a while. And actually look behind you. Okay. And then we'll come back to center and I'll explain why those are important and why they work in just a couple minutes once we get into it. But thank you. I know we're all super busy, so centering here together is awesome.
Okay. So with that, let's lean into this concept of getting the room involved in the conversation. So thank you for that. I needed it. I think, as I told you, as I was driving in today, I thought I was going to be late, and I'd given myself more than enough time, I thought. So the concept of even just the stress burnout this morning was sort of apropos for the topic that we are coming into. So that deep breath was helpful for me as well. But for those of you that have been on Lakeside Chats, and for those of you that are new, we want to engage you right away. So let's answer this very first question using the chat feature. What is your personal sign of burnout? All right, Cara, you talked about it already. So before you jumped in, you knew it, right? So you said you sort of needed to break away. What was your personal sign of burnout? And I'll watch the chat as you answer this question.
Yeah, mine was a lot that I see coming up here is just I could not find patience for the people in my life, whether that was work or at home or my friends. I kind of use the term, which is a little bit slang, just like popping off. I would pop off without really being able to manage it. And then I would always want, because I'm a pretty empathetic person, I would always want to go back and apologize. And I realized, like, I'm tired of apologizing for the way that I showed up to people. Like, I want to be able to manage this better. I just wanted to be a better human being. And it was kind of embarrassing sometimes, actually, because I felt like I had no control over it. And it seemed to get worse and worse as my job just got more and more stressful. So
yeah,
excessive swearing.
There's so
Someone
much
said excessive swearing.
And I was going to say, well, and you're not alone. I love that this is already the framework that we've got, as somebody already started swearing. So thank you for breaking the seal there for those of you that have already done that. Irritability, frustration. There's a couple of these that I want us to hold on to as I know what we get into this next slide. And it's, what did Lori say? I hate coming to work. And Lori, we're going to hold that one for a hot second, because I think that one's going to show up here again as we talk about this further. But irritability, tiredness. I think even the first one that I saw was even the concept that you get sick. Like it's not even just showing up in the space of like the immediate tendencies, but the idea of illness is an element. Excessive swearing. Yes, that's probably what my kids is where I show up. I love this. This is great. Disengagement is, I think, the other one that I see as a kind of a constant thread as well. It's interesting. So for me in particular, I feel like swearing and short fuse is probably the ones I would say. And I think that's when and mine is, I get like true to the point of panic attack. Like I will actually feel myself having like, where I can't shut my brain off. I can feel myself sort of running through this constant state of a to-do list. And mine shows up almost to the point of a true panic attack, to the point where I have had to find coping mechanisms to sort of get through that space as well. So thank you all for sharing. This is great. Yeah. And I think Siobhan says something really interesting here. Is there a distinction between stress and burnout? And I don't know if we get into that. I don't know if we've talked about that yet, Cara, but I'm curious to get your lens on that question. Great question, Siobhan.
It is a great question. And I think that we will probably talk about it when we talk about the definition. That might be a good time to transition into that. Because we will for sure talk about that. And then I do want to point out one thing that I saw a few times that is so prevalent in my clients, my individual clients, really is just a loss of joy. I saw a few people put that up there, and which is one of the saddest things for me, is just for people not finding joy in life. So
yeah. Okay, so we're going to talk about this lovely definition, and I'm going to read it just because I think so this was, I thought, really interesting, and then we're going to call out some of the areas, and then we're going to dissect this definition. So definition of burnout. And when we talked about this initially, I was going to pull up the Urban Dictionary definition of burnout, and Cara quickly reminded me that we probably should go to something a bit more medical. And so the World Health Organization gave us a definition of burnout on May 28th of 2019, and they called it an occupational phenomenon. Burnout is a syndrome conceptualized by resulting from chronic workplace stress that is not successfully managed. It is characterized by three dimensions: feeling of energy depletion and exhaustion, increased mental distance from one's job, or feeling negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and reduced professional efficacy. And I might have said some of those words wrong, and you all can critique me in the chat later if you want to. But there are three parts of this that you wanted to talk about. But Cara, before we jump into the three parts, right? So the three things that sort of struck us as we were talking about this, what were your genuine thoughts sort of as you saw this definition while you were in the process of writing the book?
Yeah, this was really eye-opening for me. First, the occupational phenomenon. So it's listed in the International Classification of Diseases, but not as a disease, but as this phenomenon. And I don't know why I found that funny, but I still find it a little bit funny that they talk about this as a phenomenon. But the fact that the World Health Organization found that this was such a detriment to people's health that they needed to A, define it, and B, do something about it. Like, this is an organization, their whole job is to figure out and to help the health of every single person in the world. So it's not just in the United States, but this is happening everywhere. And realizing a couple of things around, like, this is workplace stress. So we talk about burnout a lot personally, but this workplace stress is what the cause of that is. And then that last one for me, that reduced professional efficacy, like, that is just part of burnout is you are less good at your job, which tells me employers should be caring about this. And oftentimes employers don't, because they feel like it's a personal issue. So those are the things that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, I think when we talked about it, so the three words that we talked about was that fact that this is, I think when I thought burnout initially, I didn't immediately tie it to work. Like, I just thought burnout was like, I mean, and maybe it was momming or wifing or owning a home. Like, I just felt like burnout hit me in all sorts of areas. What I found super interesting about this was that they defined it to the workplace. And I think that's that piece that you're talking about with the idea that, like, this is why employers need to, like, that the World Health Organization identifies burnout as a workplace issue. It's not stress. Stress is probably, Siobhan, to your question, the other parts of this. Burnout is when it's tied directly to your work. Is that a fair statement, Cara?
Yes, exactly. That's how the WHO looks at it. We obviously, people can talk about burnout as much as in any context they want. But when you're thinking about the World Health Organization, this is definitely a workplace issue that has real impacts on individuals and workplaces.
All right.
And we did talk. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just thinking that word phenomenon. The one thing I meant to do after we talked about that word phenomenon was to see if that showed up anywhere else. Did they call it? Did you ever look into the idea of like, do they refer to anything else as a phenomenon or without it being a disease?
I haven't looked into that. I don't know.
I'm so curious about that now.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a common thing they do or not. My suspicion was, and I am just purely guessing, is they didn't want to call it a disease because there are a lot of implications then. Even though it's listed in the international classification as diseases, there are a lot of implications with regard to leaves of absence and medical care and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's my guess as to why, but that is 100% guessing.
Yeah, no, we'll have to, not that I'm going to go back and read everything, but I'd be curious to know if they refer to anything else as a phenomenon versus a disease when it's got in that disease classification. And then the last thing that I think is super interesting is that darn date that it took until 2019, May of 2019. So there's two parts of it when I saw the date that I thought about. One, that seems really long. I mean, burnout has to have been happening before 2019, right? Like, that's the one thing. Yeah. And then I thought about the fact that they defined it before COVID, like this concept that, like, I feels like the conversation around mental health and burnout, like, these are words that it feels have been used more prevalently as post COVID, but the fact that this was even in place pre COVID, I think is a really interesting sort of timeline in terms of where it shows up in the pendulum, kind of in the spectrum of the time of where they made that distinction as well. What were your thoughts when you saw the date on this definition?
Yeah, it surprised me as well for both of those reasons. My assumption going in would have been they identified it after 2020 because that highlighted so many things. It also kind of surprised me that they didn't highlight this before. I mean, we've been talking about burnout for, I can remember my time at Best Buy. talking about burnout, 15 years ago. And so maybe even a little bit longer. So it surprised me that it kind of took to a little bit longer than I would have anticipated.
Mhm.
Because we all have felt burnout way before 6 years ago. So
Yeah. Right. The fact that they're finally giving it the clout at the health organization, I think is
right.
probably part of it. But to your point, it has to have been something that people have been feeling, discussing. I don't know. It's like the marriage of all three pieces of those elements are, I think,
Yeah.
super interesting, that we're not going to call it a disease because, to your point, there are larger and longer, further implications in terms of what will we cover, what will health insurance cover, thinking back to even last month's Lakeside Chat. But even then, the idea that we're also going to very clearly tell you that this is something that you experience at work or through the work that you do, which is also really interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So then let's talk about this at a personal level. So I want to get into your guys' heads and talk a little bit about why is the topic of burnout important to you personally? So you all just opted for an hour of your day, not just I'm sure it's all because you just wanted to hear and see me for the day. Or maybe Cara, maybe it was not me at all. But I'm curious to just get an idea from your guys', for those of you that are in the chat, what are some of the reasons why burnout is important to you? Cara, I know you talked a little bit about your story of where this sort of came up, but do you want to talk a little bit more about why this is important to you as well?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It started very selfishly with me, just trying to solve my own issues. And I actually we didn't talk about this, Erin, I don't think. I am positive for the BRCA gene that causes breast cancer and ovarian cancer. And I've known for a really long time, my family was one of the first families part of the study. And so my health has always been top of mind for me. And I realized I was doing all of these things to help myself work out, try to eat right, take all my supplements, but I was letting the stress of the job possibly literally be killing me because of this genetic predisposition I have. Um, and so that was, quite honestly, I got into this thinking, I have to save myself. My grandma died at 57, my mom died at 60. I don't want that same fate. And then once I started learning about it, I just got really sad about the state of the health in America and probably the world, but really focused on my communities and my friends and thinking we have to do something to fix this. There's so many forces working against us because they want us unhealthy because then we're in their sales funnel, right? Big food, big pharma, medical community, not everyone in those industries. But we've got to do something to make a move on this because we need our communities to be healthier physically and mentally. And so I have a real passion around employers really can make a difference here if they focus on something that also benefits them.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing that too. I know that's a lot. So thank you. I think it's great to see so many of the people that are commenting are approaching this from an outside in lens, right? That they want to make sure that they're creating a culture of it, that they want to make sure that they're supporting their employees about it. I think that was our hope, is that this would attract not just those who are doing it for their own individual sense of supporting their own burnout, though totally understandable to your point, appropriate to be selfish in this space, but that there are also people that are thinking about it through the lens of their employee, sitting in a place of change, and creating and being the voice of it in their own organization, which is awesome to see as well. And Quinn, I know that this is a bit of recency, but I love how you said that, though it's not a me problem and it's not the fault of my employer, but I haven't figured it out yet, right? This part of recognition that there's systems in place, right? There's work that needs to be done, right? There's this balancing act of it all. And yet it's not always just a me issue at the same time. And I think that's a really, really thoughtful statement there, Quinn. So thank you for that. All right. So let's get into the task at hand. Why is burnout feeling normal? So I'm handing that lovely big question off to you. Why does burnout feel normal, Cara? What is your research? What has your passion on this topic told you?
Yeah, so there's a few, I think of it in three buckets. The first one is just our cultures. So a lot of us, kind of people my age, a little bit younger, a little bit older, we grew up in this and we still live, a lot of workplaces live in this hustle culture. And where we equate, if we're exhausted, we equate exhaustion with excellence and thinking this is I have to be exhausted for me to be doing a good job. And we kind of wear our burnout like a badge of honor. I can remember us kind of having not arguments, but talking about how many hours we worked with some coworkers as well. I worked more than you, so that must mean that I don't know what that means, like more effective or better at my job or whatever. So we've created this hustle culture, and then it's also risky for people to go in and say that they're overwhelmed, or to say I need some help, or to say this is really impacting me personally. So we've got this culture that supports actually burnout and rewards it quite often. Then we have workplace processes on top of that culture that aren't super effective. So I'm sure some of you out there have seen, we have a lot of leaders out there who don't know how to manage and workloads and prioritize work. And so there's a lot of pet projects. There's a lot of cost cutting because we've got to look at the financials. And so what that ends up with is people constantly asking everyone to do more with less. Right. And so that then also creates these processes where we're in firefighting mode. We've got fire drills happening all the time because we don't have those processes in place to manage it very well. And then the part that gets me really excited, because it's more than of what I can do and when I work with my clients, what they can do individually. Sometimes we can't change that culture or processes, but the reason burnout feels normal also has to do with our brains. I got a little bit geeky during 2020. I took this neuroscience class for coaches and really learned a lot about the brain and how it's impacting us. And I'm sure most of you have heard about neuroplasticity and how awesome that is, that our brains, even as adults, we're finding can change in neural connections and actual structure based on the experiences that we have in the world. But what happens with burnout is that that's a huge benefit to us for longevity, health, all those kind of things, but it turns against us because we're in this culture. And so our brain starts to get wired thinking this is just normal because we're in that chronic stress state. And so our brain, instead of what should be a warning signal to us, that fight or flight, where back in the day we would say like, oh, there's a lion trying to eat me. It lasted a short time. And that was a warning signal for us, what was happening. But we now ignore that warning signal. So our brain starts to tell us this is just normal. And so we just operate in a way where burnout is just normal. It is what it is. And this is how I have to live, which is not healthy. And that's why if we kind of tie back to that, that quick breath and the quick kind of looking around grounding exercise that we did, that's why that is so effective, is because that long exhale tells your brain that you're safe. Looking around, taking just a minute, looking behind you, noticing things here, it tells your brain that you're safe, even if just for a moment. So that's why we started with that one.
No, so I was saying that when I have my therapist, when I have my panic attack moments, my exercise that I do, my grounding exercises, I shut my eyes and I listen for 5 things. Like I can't reopen my eyes until I can hear 5 things. And for me, what my lovely therapist has told me is it reminds me of the what is versus the what is, like the thing you can't, like the what is right now, like in that grounding element of it. That and
Yes.
it has been, and I know that it sounds, I am not a woo-woo person. I love when you said woo-woo because it gave me fruition to say it myself. But that exercise itself, when I have those moments, is so helpful because it just allows me to go, okay, this is the what is, this is the what's in the space that I'm in right now. So I love that other exercise of being able to just look around and notice something you haven't noticed, because it's the same thing. It grounds you in the what is, which I think is beautiful.
Yes.
Um, okay, so that's why burnout feels normal. But what we promised everyone today is the other half of this, and it's the why it shouldn't feel normal. And this is where you get into your more neuroscience piece of it, because I think we talked about this being 3 parts, right? It's the human, it's the business, and it's the community, if that's what I remember. So do you want to talk about it through those three lenses, Cara?
Yes, I would love to, and I will try really hard to be succinct because I could probably talk about this for about 3 hours. It's why I got into this work. And so we'll start with kind of the human case, right? The individual, which is how I got into work. And when we were talking earlier about the World Health Organization definition, and that workplace stress causes this. It was so common in my time at HR where I would say to someone, or someone would say to me, or we would talk about in meetings, hey, is your personal life interfering with work? And leaders ask that question a lot. Or they will say, don't let your personal life interfere with work. But nobody has ever, that I have heard, switched and asked that question, is your workplace stress impacting your personal life? And how is it impacting you? They even did Apple made a whole TV show, that Severance show, about how do you cut it off so your personal life and your work life are completely separate. But if we think about how workplace stress, remember that definition, it's caused by workplace stress, that burnout, and how it impacts us. First, it impacts us relationally. So 19% of people, I think is the number. So 1 in 5 people have missed a major family event, or they have canceled important time with a loved one because of work. So 20% of us are missing major life events for work. 71% of people report that workplace stress at some point in their career has ended a relationship or contributed to the ending of a breakup or a divorce. I had an individual client once who that was a real thing for him, and he was still trying to not be frustrated with his employer because he knows that the stress from his job ended a relationship that was really important to him. It had been a couple years and he was still really struggling with that and his commitment to this organization. I don't think he works there anymore, to be quite clear. And so our relationships, it impacts. And then in addition to that, just the physical impact. So we could talk about this forever, and I can send some resources if this is helpful, but burnout is associated with heart disease. It's associated with diabetes, insomnia, gut issues, depression, high cholesterol, so many things physically that it impacts our physical health a lot. And there are 120,000 deaths per year that are directly related to workplace stress. So every day there are 300 people dying because of the stress from their job. So it is this human case, this individual case is really, really important. It's having a big impact on the way that we experience our physical health and our relationships. So I don't know if you want to ask any questions there.
I was going to say, and if you guys have questions too, or you want to let her get geeky, feel free. This is what the chat is about. Molly says she thinks the numbers seem low.
Yeah, that is, I think that is a result of all of us feeling it so much. So you look at these, and yes, they're self-reported. So people don't want to share a lot of things. You're exactly right, Molly. And a lot of times when you look at these numbers, there'll be wide kind of ranges of what is impacting, like how many people are burned out or the impacts of that. So, but we'll talk about actual numbers when we talk about the business case too. You want to move into that, Erin?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think the self-reporting piece of it too, but it also goes back to the previous slide. It feels normal. So you don't admit to it at some point too, because there's that normalcy and that the activity that your brain is also telling you that this is how I'm supposed to feel. Like there's that normalcy piece of it too, that's why it's happening at the same time.
Right. And even somebody just mentioned around the family, missing the family events seems pretty low. I love that point, Erin, that a lot of that could be associated with that same feeling. Well, this is just how it is. Like at work, you sometimes miss some family things, right? And so we just accept it as a part of how we exist as an employee in this country. So
Or to that
Um,
statement you said, right? The idea of, is your personal life impacting your work life, right? I think you and I just like had that like lovely epiphany moment of like how much we should be talking about it from both lenses, right? That
yeah,
employers and maybe this is getting into this particular question, right? Are we ever asking the question the other way around? Is your work life impacting your personal life
right.
versus being so concerned of whether or not your personal life is impacting your work life? All
Yeah.
right.
But
Many of you
before,
mentioned, oh no, go ahead, Kara.
yeah, before we get there, can we flip back? We only talked on the individual. I want to make sure we touch on the business case and the
Yeah,
community case, if that's
go for it.
okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So that individual case is what, like I said, I started kind of with that personal, that burnout and me trying to solve this for myself, which led me into realizing that this is a huge problem in organizations. And so if we think about the business case of it, and here's again, you look at Robert Half, Sherm, Gallup, they have different numbers, but between 36 and 76% of people report being burned out. And 91% of people, I mean, that's 9 in 10, have reported that unmanageable work stress has decreased their productivity and impacted the quality of their work. So, and the costs are unbelievable. So if you look worldwide, globally, burnout costs organizations about 322 billion was the last number that they released. And now this is a global number. But if you think about that, I looked this up because I was like, I need to know how many countries have a GDP below what we actually lose in productivity for burnout. And 140 out of 170 countries actually have a GDP lower than the burnout, what burnout is costing this world. Um, and then if you think about healthcare costs, so people who are burned out obviously cost more in healthcare. And in the United States, that's between about 125 and 190 billion dollars a year in increased healthcare costs because of all the physical things that we mentioned before. So this is a huge number. And for those of you where this is part of your job, if you work in HR or you're thinking about this, a great resource is the National Safety Council. They have a calculator out there that you can use based on the number of employees in your organization, the state that you live in, and they can estimate the cost of what burnout is costing your organization specifically. It's usually about $15,000 per employee. For absenteeism, turnover, and healthcare costs, that does not include lost productivity. But it's a great calculator for you to go out there if you need to build a business case for some of your leaders that talks about what this is really, really costing us. And then that to me is what led me to the community piece. So this community piece, if we stop and think about, I'm going to have you go through another exercise really quickly and just kind of close your eyes because this is where I get really passionate. So everyone just kind of close your eyes for a moment. We're going to go through a short, very short little visualization. But I want you to think about if kind of one of your hardest days. So you're coming home from a hard day, the stress has built up, you've maybe been treated disrespectfully by your boss, unappreciated, and you just are one of those days where you're at the end of your rope. So just kind of feel that and notice how that day comes up to you as you move through the world after work. So how do you drive home after a day like that? How do you talk to your family? How do you talk to the grocery store clerk, your neighbors when you see them? What version of you shows up after those days? Yeah, someone just said cranky, annoyed, and snotty. I like it. And so now I want you all to take a deep breath because we want to shake that off. It's only 9:39 a.m. I don't want to leave you with that feeling. So shake that off, like shake your shoulders, shake out your hands, and then take that deep breath. And I want you to think about the opposite. So think about a time when you've had another really busy day, maybe it was a stressful day, but you felt accomplished, you felt valued, you felt respected, appreciated by your boss and the people around you. You felt like you kind of owned that stressful day. And then picture yourself on the drive home after this kind of a day, or in the line at the grocery store, or with your neighbors or your kiddos when you come home. And what version of you kind of arrives home after that kind of day? It is very, very different. And so you can open your eyes and kind of come back to this, but that ripple effect of what happens to you at work to the rest of our community is what gets me really excited about this work. I know it seems a little pie in the sky, but I truly believe that if employers who have a real financial reason to wrap their arms around this, if we can get employers as a whole to care about the well-being of their employees, even if it's only for financial reasons, the ripple effect that this can have on families and communities can be staggering, and it can change the way that people show up in the world with each other, which is my kind of passion around just creating a better place, a better world than what we're living in kind of right now. So those are my reasons why burnout should not be normal.
Mine goes to like, I have like, apparently I live in a space where does anyone else feel like they should have like a soundtrack of their life happening? So as I was having those moments, it was like different music was playing as I had that, like, it was like a different, more angry type music on the way in, or like that part of it. And then the way home, it was like, on the good day, it was like a much different soundtrack. Like I felt like I had this sort of musical soundtrack running through both of those scenarios. So that just shows where my crazy head goes. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we've given the full breadth to this part of it. I want to make sure I don't lose any other part of this, because I realize there's more to say here and I don't want to lose sight of it. And again, same with any of you that are on the chat. If you've got additional questions or you want to dive deeper into any one of these, please throw your chat out into the piece in there as well. But I do want you to start thinking about the fact that you are, whether you are leading a team, part of a team, running an organization, working with a team, even through a consultant space, what would help you? Kind of what would be a way, or what would be a tool that would help you and your team manage burnout better at work? Is there something that you need, or something that you are hoping to get in terms of being able to bring this not just to your own personal place of when you're feeling burnt out, but also to be in a place where you're able to support the team that you're with? Cara, I know that again, when you talked about sort of the departure and then the time that you spent on this, are you finding that it's more tools that people are leveraging, or is it something that people are living in a space where they are? Is it a change of mindset? Like, is it like a resetting framing of the brain, or are you seeing that there are actual physical or tools that people or managers should be using?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. For individuals, changing the way that it happens for us individually happens through two tracks. One is physiological. So we did that breath, that looking around, that grounding actually slows down our physiology. And the other is the way that we think about things, the frame that we put on stuff, the way that we approach situations. And there are skills that you can learn for each of those. And then for organizations, in my research, what I found is we are spending so much time and money on resources, benefits, and policies that are meant to help the well-being of organizations. And I think most organizations care. There was actually an interesting SHRM study that said I think the number was 64% of organizations say they care about the well-being of their employees, but they also interviewed the employees in those organizations, and only like 23% thought that the organization cared.
Molly, do you think that one seems low too? Because I think that one seems low as well.
Yeah, so I think employers care, and they're going about it with with benefits and policies that matter. They're very important, but they're only kind of two parts of the puzzle. And the third part is really around these leadership skills, and how do we lead in a different way that can contribute to people's well-being. You don't have to do anything different. It's not going to take extra time out of your day, but it's just leading through a different lens. And so those three things, in my opinion, the benefits, policies, and leadership skills, are the things that are going to really combat this burnout.
Okay, so let's jump into it. Let's talk about this idea of leadership through the well-being lens.
Yeah.
And I want to just call out a couple, like, as I'm thinking about these stats as they sort of layer on top of each other. And I think of even the conversations we've had in these Lakeside chats and prior conversations, as well as we think about healthcare being something that we can't fix, right? That's this broken element that we know is out there. Yet we're hearing stats of 125 plus billion dollars has an impact on burnout. And we know what that can do to the bottom line of a business. You're starting to create a true business case on why the conversations around supporting burnout. Not only is it, in impacting the quality of work, which I thought was another piece that I thought was super, like, this is a quality element. This is quality control
Yes.
in its finest, but it's also a bottom line element in terms of what it could potentially do to our benefits costs or to our total, or if you're self-funded, your total spend. So those are things I heard as I'm layering this conversation together. Anything that you want to say in particular before we jump into some of your trademarked inquiries to move into that piece of it as well?
Yeah, when I think about leadership through a well-being lens, I exactly what you said is the costs are staggering. The business case is there. One thing I didn't mention is customer service, and the number is right around 30%, which also seems lower to me than it probably actually is. But your customer service drops by about 30% for every employee who is burned out, stressed, disengaged. So it has a real impact on it. And thinking about leadership through a well-being lens, to me, is a few things. I will cover two of them. Is this idea around contributing versus constricting. And so, because we are human beings, when we interact with someone else, no one is ever left neutral. Even if it is a small shift, you are either contributing to the way somebody feels, to their well-being, or you're taking away from it, you're constricting it. And so the way that our leaders interact with their employees is paramount to how people feel, whether they're driving home angry at the end of the day or driving home maybe still tired from a tough day, but relaxed, resilient, and feeling good. That leader can make a difference. And the way we treat each other in the organization, not just your leaders. And then the second piece is that well-being is, I mentioned this before, is a skill set. And just like anything else, if you want to learn Spanish, you want to learn piano, you want to learn, I don't know, how to hotwire a car, whatever it is you want to learn, you can learn it. It is just, and well-being is just a skill set that we can learn. We've turned it into this destination or this place of being, but you can learn these skills. And that was the biggest aha to me for myself too, is I'm not fated to just be a person who's stressed out and short with people all the time. I can do something different.
You had mentioned too the concept of policy. I want to just sort of, I don't want to lose sight of the some of more of the tangible or tactical things as I'm looking at some of the questions that are coming through of like, is there something more tactical that we can be advocating for or encouraging to do? Are there policies that you're seeing employers writing in or that they're encouraging? I'd love to just sort of dive into that little nuance piece because I'm reading some of this even coming through the chat in terms of the level of influence. And benefits obviously is one part of it, of making sure that mental health is built into it, making sure that you're giving space. But I don't think we ever talked about the policy side of it. And I heard you say that, and I didn't want to lose that side of it.
Yeah, I don't talk a lot about policies, but what I have found in my research is that, every organization is doing what they think is best for them. Policy that we talk a lot about is the work from home policy, or, in office or work from home policy. And that is going to be, you can look at a lot of different studies and a lot of different research on what is most beneficial for people. In the way, Erin, you and I talked about this, in the way the brain operates, one thing that is important from that is your brain, when it's used to working in a certain location, changes in the way that it thinks, those neural connections, based on where you are. So even if you are at home, from a burnout perspective, it's important for you to have a very specific space where you can close the door, a space where you work, and that you're not, in your kitchen working or in your bedroom working, that sort of thing. But policies don't, you can have the best benefits and the very best policies. And if you have leadership that doesn't enable those, or doesn't help people with those, or even let people use the benefits, it can create havoc with regard to work stress and burnout. So what's most important to know from a policy perspective is identifying what's important for your organization, but then creating the leadership structure and the responsibility to support those policies.
I love that. All right, I'm looking at the clock going,
I
you're right,
know,
we
I just
probably could
noticed
have
that
gone
too.
longer on this one, but I want to give you time
Yeah.
to talk a bit about your research and about how that research has shown up in terms of these 5 inquiries. So I'm going to let you geek out, Cara.
Yeah, thank you. And this looks very busy, and it is. I worked a lot on, do I make this kind of easier, but the components of it I think are really important. And there is science behind all of this. So a lot of this sounds very woo-woo, but I'm a Capricorn, German descent. I'm like a Gen Xer, so I am not a woo-woo person. I wasn't. Now people probably would say that I am, but there is science behind all of this. And in my book, I talk about the science of it because that was important to me. Um, and so this is basically a roadmap to help someone go from that burned out state to a place where they're more resilient. I talk at burnout to brilliance. And this roadmap starts with yourself and then moves into individuals. And so the understanding how you show up and deciding how you want to show up and how you want to be has to do with understanding yourself first and really getting into realizing why you show up the way you do. So a boss would often say to me, Cara, you need to be more patient. Like, why are you getting so defensive when you're getting performance feedback? Stop doing that. And I would be like, you're right, I'm sorry, and would feel terrible, but would never get to the root of why is that happening. So this is a 5-step process. It's this roadmap to get there. And I highlighted just that first step so you could see kind of how it works. And so that first question, I call this the 5 inquiries. And there are these 5 questions you have to ask and understand about yourself to get to that core self, that resilient, optimized, integrated self. That first one is, what do I believe? And so really getting behind the thoughts, emotions, and beliefs, because our brain is an excellent storyteller, will make things up for us. And each of these steps, I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because I want to teach you one thing that's really important. But each of those steps has a couple skills that goes with it. You'll see the skills here are breath and self-awareness, tying to that physiological and also tying to that psychological track that we talked about. And each step has a character. I call it your cast of characters that make up who you are that you need to understand. And so we've all heard that term, the inner critic, I think before, but not fighting that, but embracing it. So one skill I want to make sure you go away with, and it ties in that breath. It ties in a few other skills. So there's actually a few in one, which is awesome. But when you find yourself in a place where you are really stressed, you're frustrated with somebody, you can do this preventively too. But I call this my quick balance strategy. And the acronym that you use is called BAM, B-A-M, super easy to remember. And so you take one of those deep breaths, and remembering that long exhale is key. If you don't remember anything else from today, remember to breathe like 4 or 5 times a day with at least one really, really long exhale. If you could start doing that, that would be amazing. So that first step is you take one deep breath. The second step, the A, is the affirm, and you ask yourself, who do I want to be in this moment? And then the third, the M, is some sort of movement. So if you're at home and nobody's watching you, you can stand up and do 50 jumping jacks or some push-ups or anything like that. I use this all the time when I'm with my family who's driving me crazy or a client who's driving me bananas. So if you're sitting at a desk or you're with someone, the way you can take a long exhale without doing the whole like, that would be too obvious. So take a deep breath with a long exhale. Remind yourself, who do I want to be right now? Affirm yourself. And the movement can also just be, I often will just like clench up your quads, your hamstrings, your butt, as tight as you can, and then release that. Because what's happening is there's energy inside your body when you're getting into that fight or flight space, and it's got to be released somehow. And if you don't release it, it's going to continue to fester and create that cortisol kind of running through your bones, through your body. So that is one quick strategy that you can use. And that ties into that breath and the self-awareness. So sorry, I went through that really quickly because of our
No,
time.
this is great. And I think, I mean, again, in the vein of something tactical and real, right? The idea of something simple to remember. I love when there's a science to the ask, right? That there's an element to that you're not just saying do it because it's good for you, so do it. You're saying that there's a science to it too, which I think is it gives reason and rationale behind the activity as well. We only have 5 minutes left, and I have a couple things I want to make sure we get to. So this is not, I mean, there's so many other things I feel like we could talk about, but I want to make sure that lots of people are asking for those tangible resources. And I know that the next slide very clearly talks about how they can get some of them. So do you want to talk about what access and what information they can get if they do the text health to what kind of resources they might get? I'm behind the scenes, Cara, because you feed
perfect.
this up.
Just text that word health. I don't think you need the quotes. I don't know if it works with them.
Oh, sorry, I did health.
Nope,
just
that's okay.
health,
That's
no
okay.
quotes. You're right. No quotes.
No quotes. Yeah. To the 55444. And will get, I just have some free resources for people because I'm like, I think there's stuff everybody needs to have. And one of them is the cutout of that band. There's a little thing you can cut out and like post to your desk. So you have the BAM strategy. And then there are just other resources, individual resources. So kind of thinking about your well-being tracker for your morning and evening routines. And then there are a few for organizations. So a workplace well-being strategy. There's an outline of a strategy. So you have somewhere to start if you really want to create a strategy for your organization. And then one of the other great resources is a scripts to use when employees come to you and they say that they're burned out or they're stressed out. So how you can have that conversation with your employees, or if you need to have that conversation with your boss, how you can start to have that conversation and tips for you to start welcoming this conversation in the workplace. But they're all in that resource. It'll be sent out to you.
So one of the resources that's not in this text option is our book. And I realized I didn't even say the name of your book. And I am a failure at this point as a host, but pitch your book just a little bit. And then I want to just closing thoughts, and then we'll end at 10. So tell us a little bit about the book and the title, so we don't not say the title of the book. Cause again,
I probably should have started with that myself.
Yeah. I'm like, how did we forget that? The picture was there, but I totally didn't say it.
I get so excited about it. So the name of the book is called Health Wanted, Inquire Within. The 5 inquiries. It makes sense that Inquire Within. And it really is set up. It goes through this whole process. It gives the business case for it. It gives the individual case for why well-being is so important. And it's really set up like a workshop, like a workbook, so that you can go through and really start to practice these different skills. The intent is for you to build a skill set around your own well-being so that you can manage. We're never going to get rid of stress, right? But our ability to manage that stress and be resilient throughout it is key. And so it teaches those skills for you to be able to do that.
Awesome. Thank you. I didn't want us to. So I will make sure that in the follow-up materials, I will send you the link to her Amazon and send you a link to a bunch of other stuff as well. But I will make sure that I do a better job of promoting the book than I meant to on the backside. So just make sure that you've got that as well. With that, I want to just close out with the idea of what to mark your calendar for going into next month. Buy the book. So you've got all sorts of people sort of promoting it for you already. But next month in October, we are talking about the culture clock. I'm really excited to introduce 3 new faces to Lakeside Chat. Nick Burns, who leads our recruiting division here at Lakeside, is going to join me. We've got one of our recruiters on, and then a client that's going to be on to talk about how organizations are hiring for and thinking about culture through their hiring process, and how we envision those are going to be some of the things that are going to lean into as the evolution of hiring and tactics around hiring into 2026 will continue to evolve. So watch for us next month, October 21st, for again third Tuesday, 9 a.m. Same bad time, same bad channel. And with that, 1 minute to spare. Thank you so much. The love is out there. Lots of people got into this. This was great, Cara. This was awesome. I'm Becky. Our friend Becky is currently on safari in Africa and sending me pictures of tigers in the wild. But I am so thankful that she found a way to connect the two of us. This was amazing. Thank you all for being here. Hope to see you on a future Lakeside Chat. Cara, have a great day. Everyone, have a great day. Don't forget long exhales. Long exhales, everyone.
Exactly.
Bye, guys.
Bye.